You would think declining to co-sign a $55,000 loan for a brother with bad credit would be seen as common sense, not a betrayal. But in my family, no was treated like a dirty word. The moment I refused to risk my future for his truck, the screaming didn't start. The silence did. It was a cold, coordinated punishment designed to break me, but it only ended up showing me exactly who they really were. The vibration of my phone against the hardwood desk was a sound I had trained myself to ignore, but the pattern was persistent. 2 buzzes, a pause, 2 more. It was the specific cadence assigned to my mother, a signal that usually meant she had forgotten her Netflix password or needed to know how long a turkey took to thaw. I finished the email I was typing, hit send, and finally flipped the screen over. The message was short, devoid of emojis, and terrifyingly vague. Family meeting tonight. Important. 7 o'clock. My stomach did a slow, heavy roll. In the Sanders family, the phrase family meeting was never used for good news. It was reserved for crises, usually financial, usually urgent, and always requiring a solution that involved me opening my wallet or my schedule to fix a problem I had not created. I stared at the screen, watching the time tick from 5:15 to 5:16. I had plans. I had a life. I had a spreadsheet for my own budget that I wanted to review. But the conditioning ran deep. I was the eldest daughter, the reliable one, the one who had made it out of our small town to a mid-sized city 40 minutes away, the one with a salary and a 401k and a credit score that I guarded like a fragile antique. I typed back a single word. Okay. The drive to my parents' house was a 40-minute exercise in anxiety. The mid-October leaves were turning a bruised purple along the highway, but I barely saw them. I ran through the possibilities. Was Dad sick? He had been complaining about his back again. Did the water heater finally die? They had been nursing that rusted tank along for 6 years. Or was it Kyle? It was usually Kyle. My brother was 30 years old, 2 years younger than me, and possessed the kind of charm that worked on everyone except the people who had to clean up his messes. He was a dreamer, a schemer, a man perpetually 6 months away from his big break. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the house looked the same as it always did. The siding was a faded cream color, peeling slightly around the window frames. My dad's truck, a reliable beast he had owned since I was in high school, sat in its usual spot. But next to it was a small, unfamiliar sedan. A rental? I walked inside without knocking. The smell of pot roast and stale coffee hit me, the olfactory signature of my childhood. In the kitchen, my mother was wiping down the counters with a fervor that suggested nervousness. My father sat at the head of the oak table, his arms crossed over his chest, staring at a placemat. And there was Kyle, sitting on the long side of the table, looking unusually well-groomed. He was wearing a collared shirt. He had shaved. "Hey, Madeline," Kyle said. He flashed a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Thanks for coming." I sat down opposite him, keeping my purse in my lap. It felt like armor. "What is going on?" I asked. "Is everyone okay?" Mom stopped wiping the counter and came to stand behind Dad, resting a hand on his shoulder. "We are all fine. Honey, we just needed to talk to you about an opportunity for your brother." The tension in my shoulders did not drop. Opportunity was Kyle's favorite word. It usually cost me $500. Kyle cleared his throat and reached under the table. He pulled out a glossy folder, the kind they give you at dealerships, and slid it across the wood grain until it rested in front of me. I opened it. It was a printout for a truck. Not just a truck, a beast. A brand new, heavy-duty, lifted pickup in a dark, aggressive charcoal gray. It had leather seats, an upgraded technology package, and tires that looked like they belonged on a tractor. It was beautiful, objectively. I looked at the numbers circled in thick red marker at the bottom. $55,000. I blinked, waiting for the number to change. It did not. Next to the total price was a monthly payment calculation, $790 a month. I looked up at Kyle. "You are buying a $55,000 truck?" "I need it for work," Kyle said quickly, leaning forward. His eyes were wide, pleading. I have this connection with a guy who does landscaping contracts for the city. Big stuff. Parks, medians, municipal buildings. He says if I have the right equipment, he can subcontract me a full route starting next month. It is guaranteed income. Maddie, serious money. I looked back at the paper. Kyle, this is a mortgage payment. Do you have the contract signed with this guy? Well, not signed yet, Kyle said, waving a hand dismissively. He needs to see the truck first. He needs to know I am reliable. And what about your current job? I asked. Kyle had been working part-time at a warehouse, a job he complained about incessantly. I would quit, obviously. He said, this is the future. This is me finally building something of my own. I looked at my parents. Dad was studying the table. Mom was looking at me with a tight, hopeful expression. Okay, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice neutral. If you have the down payment and you can afford the $790 a month, that is great. Kyle, why am I here? The air left the room. Kyle looked at Dad, then back to me. I have the down payment covered. Mostly. Kyle lied. I knew he was lying because his left eye twitched. But the dealership, they are being difficult about the financing. My credit score is a little dinged up from that thing with the phone bill last year. And the medical debt. He took a breath. They said I need a cosigner, just to get the rate. If I do not get the preferred interest rate, the payments jump to something ridiculous. I just need a signature. Maddie, that is it. I pay every dime. You never even have to think about it. I closed the folder. The silence that followed was heavy. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock shaped like a rooster on the wall. No. I said, it was quiet, but it landed like a grenade. Mom made a small, wounded sound. Dad finally looked up, his eyebrows pulling together. Madeline, Dad said, his voice a low rumble. Hear him out. I have heard him out. I said, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. Dad, this is $55,000. That is not a small favor. That is a massive legal liability. It is just a signature, Kyle said, his voice rising in pitch. I am the one paying the bill? Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic? I am not being dramatic. I said, I am being mathematical. Kyle, what is your annual income right now? He scoffed. That does not matter. The new job is going to pay. What is it right now? I insisted. $32,000, he muttered. You make $32,000 a year. I said, after taxes. You bring home maybe $2,000 a month, if you're lucky? Something like that, he said defensively. This truck is $790. I said, plus insurance. Have you priced full coverage insurance for a truck this size for a driver with your record? That is another $200. Easy. Plus gas? This thing probably gets 12 miles to the gallon. You are looking at $1,200 a month just to keep this vehicle on the road. That is more than half your take-home pay. I told you. The new job covers it. Kyle shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Why can you never just support me? Why do you always have to act like an actuary? Because one of us has to, I snapped, my calm fracturing. Kyle, I am planning to buy a house next year. I have been saving for 5 years. If I co-sign this loan, that $55,000 of debt goes on my credit report. It changes my debt-to-income ratio. No bank will give me a mortgage if I have a massive truck loan on my books. Even if you are the one paying it. You are buying a house? Mom asked. Her voice sounded betrayed, as if my personal milestones were secrets I had kept to hurt her. I hope to, I said, if I can get approved. But I will not get approved with this anchor around my neck. It is not an anchor. Kyle stood up. Pacing the small kitchen, it is an investment. I am trying to build a business. I am trying to make something of myself so I do not have to work in that warehouse until I die. You think you are so much better than us with your office job and your benefits? You come here and look down your nose at me. I do not think I am better than you, I said, fighting the urge to cry. I am trying to protect myself, and frankly, I am trying to protect you. If you miss a payment, they do not just call you, they call me. They sue me. If you default, they garnish my wages. I will not default, Kyle yelled. You defaulted on the phone plan Mom signed for. I reminded him softly. That was different, he screamed. I was between jobs. And what happens if this contract work dries up? I asked. What happens if it rains for a month and you cannot work? The payment is still due. Dad stood up then. His chair scraped loudly against the linoleum. Enough, Dad said. We all froze. Madeline, Dad said, looking at me with a coldness that made me shiver. Your brother needs help. He is trying to step up. We have helped you plenty of times. You helped me move into my dorm. I said, and I paid you back for the gas. I paid for my own college. I paid for my own car. I have never asked you for $55,000. It is not about the money, Dad said, missing the point entirely. It is about faith. You do not have faith in your brother. I have faith that he wants to succeed. I said, but I cannot light myself on fire to keep him warm. I offered him an alternative. Kyle, look, if you need a truck for work, buy a used one. Get a Ford Ranger for $8,000. I will help you look for one. I will even help you go over your budget to see how we can save up the cash so you do not have a payment at all. I do not want an $8,000 piece of junk. Kyle spat. I need this truck. To look professional. To be taken seriously. Then you need to save up for it. I said. Kyle turned to Mom. See? I told you. She does not care. She wants me to fail. She likes it when I'm the screw-up because it makes her look perfect. Kyle, that is not true, I said, reaching out to touch his arm. He recoiled, as if I were burning hot. I am done, Kyle said. He grabbed the folder off the table. Forget it. I will figure it out myself. I do not need your charity. He stormed out of the kitchen, kicking the screen door open and letting it slam shut behind him. The sound rattled the plates in the cupboard. I sat there in the silence, feeling the adrenaline vibrate in my fingertips. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to understand, waiting for them to say, You are right. Madeline, that was too much to ask. We understand why you said no. Mom walked over to the sink and started scrubbing a pot that was already clean. She did not look at me. I just thought family helps family. She said. Her voice was soft, fragile, and devastating. Mom, I said, pleading, please understand. If I sign that, I cannot buy a home. I cannot start my own life. I am 32 years old. We all make sacrifices, she said, staring out the window into the dark backyard. Your father and I have made plenty for you. I stood up. The guilt was rising, a toxic tide, but I pushed it back with the cold, hard facts of the numbers I had just seen. I am not going to co-sign. Mom, I said firmly, I love you, and I love Kyle. But the answer is no. She did not turn around. I looked at Dad. He was staring at the wall, his jaw set in a hard line. You should go, he said. I hesitated, wanting to fix it, wanting to bridge the gap. But I knew the script. Any word I said now would just be ammunition. I picked up my purse. I will call you tomorrow, I said. Neither of them answered. I walked out to my car, the gravel crunching loudly under my boots. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw the silhouette of my brother standing in the window of the living room, watching me leave. He did not wave. The drive home was silent. I didn't turn on the radio. I replayed the conversation in my head, dissecting every sentence. Was I too harsh? Should I have validated his feelings more? Was I selfish? No. $790 a month, $55,000 total. Those were not feelings. Those were facts. When I got into my apartment, the quiet felt different. Usually, my space was a sanctuary, my beige sofa, my thriving fiddle-leaf fig. The stack of books on the coffee table. It was a life I had built with careful decisions and steady work. Tonight, the silence felt heavy. I sat on the couch and pulled out my phone. I typed a text to the family group chat, which included Mom, Dad, Kyle, and my younger sister, Jenna, who lived 3 states away and had wisely skipped this meeting. I love you guys. I know tonight was hard, but I want to support Kyle in a way that makes sense. Let's look at used trucks this weekend. Dinner is on me. I watched the screen. Read by Mom at 8:42 p.m. Read by Kyle. At 8:43 p.m. No reply. The silence had begun. The next morning, I woke up with a headache that sat behind my eyes like a bruised fruit. I went to work at the logistics firm where I managed supply chains. It was a job that required constant communication, problem solving, and conflict resolution. I was good at it because I removed emotion from the equation. At 10 in the morning, I called my mother. It went straight to voicemail. "Hi, this is Linda. Leave a message. Mom, it is Maddie. Just checking in. Love you." At noon, I texted Kyle. "Hey, hope you're okay. I meant what I said about helping you look for a different truck." The message status switched to delivered. It never switched to read. He had turned off his read receipts. By Wednesday, the silence was a physical weight. Usually, my mother texted me daily. "Did you see the weather? Do you want leftovers? Your aunt asked about you." Now, my phone was a black mirror. I checked Facebook. My mother had posted a photo of Kyle from high school, a picture of him in his football uniform. The caption read, "So proud of my son. He has a heart of gold and works so hard." Some people forget where they came from, but not him. The comment section was filled with heart emojis from her friends. I felt a flush of heat crawl up my neck. Some people. I was the some people. I resisted the urge to comment. I resisted the urge to call her and scream. I put the phone down and went back to my spreadsheets. Friday afternoon. The group chat pinged. My heart leaped. It was a message from Mom. "Sunday dinner is canceled this week. Dad and I have plans." I stared at the text. Sunday dinner was never canceled. We had Sunday dinner when Dad had the flu. We had Sunday dinner during blizzards. Okay, I typed back. Have fun. 2 hours later, I was scrolling through Instagram and saw a story posted by my cousin, Sarah. It was a boomerang video of a table set for dinner. I recognized the tablecloth. It was the blue floral one my mother only used for guests. In the corner of the frame, I saw my father's hand pouring wine. I saw Kyle laughing. They hadn't canceled dinner. They had canceled me. I put the phone down on my kitchen counter with a trembling hand. It wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was a blockade. They were shunning me. They were cutting me out of the basic fabric of the family because I had refused to sign a piece of paper. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. The hurt was a sharp, physical pain in my chest. I wanted to drive over there. I wanted to burst in the door and demand to know why my seat at the table was conditional on my credit score. But I didn't. I stayed put. Saturday morning. My phone rang. It was Sarah. I picked it up, relieved to hear a friendly voice. "Hey, Sarah. Hey, Maddie," she said. Her voice was hushed, like she was hiding in a closet. "Look, I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I thought you needed to know." "Know what?" I asked, gripping the phone tighter. "I was at dinner last night." She said, "I know." I said, "I saw the post." "Right. Sorry about that. Look, your mom and Kyle. They are telling people a story." "What story?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "They are saying you blew up at Kyle, that you laughed at his business idea and told him he would never amount to anything. They are saying you called the family white trash and stormed out." I gasped. "I never said that." "Sarah, you know I would never use those words." "I know," Sarah said gently. "But Aunt Linda was crying. She told everyone that you refused to help Kyle out of spite. She said you are hoarding your money and watching your brother struggle because you enjoy it." I sat down on the floor, my back against the cabinets. "They are lying. I know they are spinning it," Sarah said. "But Maddie, people are believing them. Uncle Jerry was talking about how success has changed you. It is ugly. Why are you telling me this?" I asked, tears pricking my eyes. "Because I think you need to brace yourself," Sarah said. "They are not just mad. They are on a campaign. Kyle is playing the victim hard. He told everyone he is going to lose this business contract because his own sister wouldn't vouch for his character. It was not his character. I shouted into the empty apartment. It was the math. It was $55,000. Sarah sighed. Truth doesn't matter to them right now. Maddie. Loyalty does. And in their book, you committed treason. We hung up a few minutes later. I sat on the floor for a long time, watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon sun. I felt a profound sense of dislocation. These were the people who had raised me. These were the people I bought Christmas gifts for. The people I worried about. The people I called when I had a flat tire. And in the span of 5 days, they had rewritten my entire history. They had turned my responsibility into cruelty. I picked up my phone and opened the text thread with my mother again. I typed out a paragraph. Mom, Sarah told me what you're saying. It is a lie. I did not insult Kyle. I looked at his budget. I am trying to be responsible. Why are you doing this? My thumb hovered over the send button. I looked at the words. They sounded defensive. They sounded desperate. If I sent this, I was playing their game. I was begging for them to stop hurting me, which only proved that their punishment was working. They wanted me to break. They wanted me to come crawling back, checkbook in hand, apologizing for a sin I hadn't committed, just to make the silence stop. I deleted the text. I deleted the entire draft. If they wanted silence, I would give them silence, but I wouldn't use it to sulk. I stood up and walked to my desk. I opened my laptop and created a new folder. I named it Family Loan Dispute. I sat there, staring at the blinking cursor. I felt a strange shift inside me. The guilt was still there. A dull ache, but something else was growing alongside it. Anger, cold, clarifying anger. I was not going to let them gaslight me. I was not going to let them rewrite reality. I opened my calendar and logged the date and time of the meeting. I wrote down exactly what was said. As best as I could remember, October 14th, request for co-signing $55,000 truck loan, $790 per month, refused based on debt-to-income concerns, offered alternative budgeting help, offer rejected. I logged the text messages. I took screenshots of the unanswered texts and the missed calls. I saved the photo of the canceled dinner from Sarah's story. I was building a record. I didn't know yet why I needed it. I told myself it was just to keep myself sane, to remind myself that I wasn't the villain they were painting. But as I saved the first document, I felt a prickle of instinct, a deep, reptilian warning that I had inherited from living in that house for 18 years. This wasn't over. The silence wasn't the end of the war. It was the siege. And if I knew my brother, if I knew the desperate, chaotic energy that fueled his life, he wasn't going to just let the truck go. He wasn't going to let the opportunity pass. He was going to find another way. I looked at the credit monitoring app on my phone. I hadn't checked it in a month. I tapped the icon, watching the little wheel spin as it loaded my data. All quiet. I whispered to myself, but the silence in the apartment felt different now. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. I closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and walked into the kitchen to make dinner for one. I used the good wine glass. I put music on. I sat at my table and ate in peace. Let them talk. Let them lie. I knew who I was. And for the first time in my life, I was going to choose my own peace over their chaos. But even as I ate, I couldn't shake the feeling that the other shoe was about to drop. And when it did, it would be wearing a $55,000 price tag. 2 days after the family meeting, the silence was still ringing in my ears. I sat at my kitchen island with a cup of lukewarm tea, staring at my laptop screen. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that checking my credit report for the 3rd time this year was obsessive behavior, the kind of thing people did when they had trust issues. But I did have trust issues. They had been installed in me 48 hours ago, around a kitchen table that smelled like pot roast and betrayal. I clicked the login button for the credit monitoring service I used. The dashboard loaded, a bright green circle indicating my score was stable. 780. It was a number I had built brick by brick, paying off student loans early, driving a paid-off sedan, and treating my credit card like a debit card. It was not just a number to me, it was my permission slip for the future. It was the key to the house I wanted to buy in the spring. I clicked on the tab labeled Inquiries. My breath hitched in my throat. There, sitting at the top of the list under Recent Activity, was a name I did not recognize. Apex Regional Lending Solutions. It was listed as a soft inquiry, dated October 15th, the day after the meeting. I stared at the date until the numbers blurred. A soft inquiry usually meant a lender was checking to see if you qualified for a pre-approval, or an employer was doing a background check, but I had not applied for a loan. I was not looking for a job. Someone had run my name. I felt a cold prickle of sweat break out on my hairline. It could be a mistake. Maybe it was a marketing promotional thing, one of those you are pre-selected offers that clutter up the mail, but the timing was too precise. The day after I said no, a lender I had never heard of took a look at my financial history. I grabbed my phone and searched for the lender's name. They were a subprime auto financing company with 3 branches in the state. One of them was in my parents' town. My stomach dropped. A physical sensation of weight plummeting through me. I dialed the number for the lender's corporate office. I put on my professional voice, the one I used when a shipment was missing in Shanghai or a truck broke down in Omaha. "Thank you for calling Apex," a woman's voice said. "How can I help you?" "Hi," I said, keeping my tone level. "My name is Madeline Sanders. I am looking at my credit report and I see an inquiry from your company dated October 15th. I did not apply for a loan with you, and I would like to know why my information was accessed." There was a pause, the sound of typing. "Can I have your social security number and date of birth for verification?" I gave it to her. The recitation of my own private numbers felt dangerous, like handing over a weapon. "Okay, Ms. Sanders," the representative said, "I see here that an application was started in your name for a secured auto loan. It looks like it was initiated through our online portal." "Started?" I asked. "Was it completed?" "No," she said. "It looks like it timed out or was abandoned before the final submission." They entered the name, address, and social, but stopped at the income verification step. Since it was not submitted, it only registered as a soft pull to check for rate eligibility. I closed my eyes. They had tried. They had actually tried to see if they could get the loan without me. "Can you tell me what email address was associated with that application?" I asked. "I cannot give out full account details for security reasons," she recited. "Please," I said, letting the professional veneer crack just a little. "I think this might be a case of identity theft. I just need to know if it was my email. Was it m.sanders@gmail? "No," she said slowly. "It was a Hotmail address. Starts with Kyle_S. The air left my lungs. Kyle. My brother still used the email address he made in high school. He hadn't even been clever enough to create a burner account. "Okay," I said. "Thank you. That is all I needed to know." I hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment, feeling the walls closing in. It wasn't just that he had done it. It was the clumsiness of it, the entitlement. He had my social security number, probably from old tax forms at my parents' house. Or maybe he had just memorized it from years of us filling out school paperwork together. He had sat down at a computer, typed in my name, and tried to leverage my credit score to buy his $55,000 truck. And he had stopped. Why? Because he didn't have my pay stubs. He couldn't fake the income verification. I stood up and walked to the window. My hands were shaking. This was not a family dispute anymore. This was fraud. If a stranger had done this, I would be filing a police report right now. But it wasn't a stranger. It was the boy I had taught to tie his shoes. It was the brother I had defended on the playground. I needed to secure the perimeter. That was the phrase that popped into my head. A holdover from a security seminar I had taken for work. Secure the perimeter. I sat back down and opened 3 new tabs on my browser. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I initiated a credit freeze on all of them. It was a digital lockdown. No one, not even me, could open a new line of credit in my name until I manually unlocked it with a PIN. As I set up the accounts, The security questions popped up. What is your mother's maiden name? What was the name of your first pet? What high school did you attend? I froze. My family knew the answers to all of these. They were the architects of these answers. My mother's maiden name was the name on her driver's license. My first pet was a golden retriever named Buster that Dad had brought home when I was 6. My high school was the one Kyle had graduated from 2 years after me. If they wanted to reset my passwords, if they wanted to bypass my security, they had the keys. They had always had the keys, because I had never thought I needed to lock the door against them. This is not melodrama. I whispered to myself, this is practical survival. I went into my email settings. I changed the password to a string of random characters that I had to write down in a physical notebook. I changed my security questions to things that were nonsensical, lies that only I would know. What was the make of your first car? Answer: Blue Elephant. What city were you born in? Answer: Jupiter. I went through everything: my bank accounts, my retirement fund, my cell phone carrier. I spent 3 hours scrubbing my digital life, erecting a fortress around my identity. By the time I was done, it was dark outside, and I felt exhausted. As if I had just run a marathon, I was safe. But the safety felt lonely. I had just acknowledged, legally and digitally, that my family was a threat to my well-being. The next day, the silence broke. I was at work, reviewing a bill of lading. When my phone buzzed, it was Kyle. My thumb hovered over the screen. I shouldn't answer. I should let it go to voicemail. I should maintain the boundary. But curiosity, that dangerous impulse, won out. I wanted to know if he would admit it. I wanted to hear his voice. Hello? I answered. Maddie? Hey, Kyle said. His voice was breathless, fast, like he was in the middle of a sales pitch. Look, I know things got heated the other night. I just wanted to reach out. I didn't say anything. I waited. I talked to the dealer again. He continued, ignoring my silence. He said we can work this out. He said if you co-sign, it is strictly a formality. It would only be temporary, like 6 months tops. Once I make 6 payments, I can refinance it into my name alone. Kyle. I said, and get this. He rushed on. He said, since I am the primary borrower, the loan does not even show up on your credit report. It is invisible to other lenders. So it won't affect your house thing. It is literally just a signature to satisfy the bank's algorithm. I felt a flash of heat in my chest. It was a lie, a bald-faced, clumsy lie. A co-signed loan appeared on both credit reports. It affected the debt-to-income ratio of both parties. There was no such thing as an invisible $55,000 debt. Did the dealer tell you that? I asked calmly. Or are you telling me that? The dealer, Kyle said. He is a pro. He knows how this stuff works. He said you have nothing to worry about. Okay, I said. If that is true, I want you to send me that in writing. What? Kyle asked. His momentum stalling. Text me that. I said, text me. The dealer confirmed that if you co-sign, the loan will not appear on your credit report and will not affect your debt-to-income ratio. Send that to me right now. Maddie. Come on. Kyle groaned. I am driving. I can't text right now. Why do you have to be so legalistic about everything? I am telling you what he said. Do you think I am lying? I think you are desperate. I said, and I think you are hearing what you want to hear. Kyle, I saw the inquiry. Silence. The line went dead quiet. What inquiry? He asked, his voice dropping an octave. I checked my credit report. I said, I saw a soft pull from Apex Regional Lending on October 15th, the day after I said no. Did you try to run an application in my name? I didn't. We were just checking rates, he stammered. Mom said maybe if we just saw what the numbers looked like, you would calm down. We didn't submit it. You used my social security number without my permission. I said, that is fraud. Kyle, it is not fraud. You are my sister, he shouted. God, you act like we are criminals. We were trying to find a solution because you were too stubborn to help. The solution is not identity theft. I said, you know what? Forget it. Kyle snapped. You are impossible. You care more about your precious credit score than you do about my life. I hope that house keeps you warm at night, Madeline, because you are going to be pretty lonely in it. He hung up. I stared at the phone. He hadn't denied it. He had justified it, in his mind. My refusal was the crime, and his fraud was just a necessary survival tactic. That evening, I got a call from Becca, a friend I had known since middle school. Becca still lived in my hometown and worked at the dental office where my mother got her teeth cleaned. She was the Switzerland of our social circle. Neutral territory. Hey, Maddie? Becca said. You got a minute? Sure, I said, bracing myself. I ran into Kyle at the gas station today. She said he was animated. What did he say? I asked. He is telling everyone about this new business venture. Becca said, he says he is starting a logistics company. He told Mike and Sarah that he has a contract lined up that is going to pay him $10,000 a month. But he just needs the equipment. $10,000 a month? I repeated. Yeah. He said he has a guy who can get him routes hauling heavy machinery or something. It was super vague. When I asked him who the contract was with, he just said private sector and winked. I rubbed my temples. Hauling heavy machinery required a CDL license, which Kyle didn't have. It required specialized insurance. It required a DOT number. You didn't just buy a pickup truck and start hauling bulldozers. Becca, I said, does it sound real to you? Honestly? Becca sighed. It sounds like that time he tried to sell those energy drinks. It sounds like a sales pitch he memorized from a YouTube video, but he is convincing people. Maddie. He told everyone the only thing standing between him and being a millionaire is his risk-averse family. He means me. I said, I know. She said, I just thought you should know. He is winding himself up, and your parents are nodding along like it is the gospel truth. Thank you. Becca, I said. I hung up and felt a wave of exhaustion. It was a delusion, a collective family delusion. They were building a castle out of clouds, and they needed my financial foundation to anchor it to the ground. When I refused to be the anchor, the castle didn't disappear. They just decided I was the enemy for pointing out gravity existed. Saturday morning, I needed groceries. I usually went to the big store in the city, but I had to drop off a package at the post office near my parents' town, so I stopped at the grocery store there. It was a mistake. I was in the produce section, weighing a bag of Honeycrisp apples. When I saw her, my mother was standing by the bananas. She was wearing her tan raincoat, the one she had bought for my college graduation. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back in a loose clip, and she was staring at a bunch of plantains with a strange intensity. My first instinct was to call out, Mom! The word was automatic. Despite everything, the meeting, the silence, the credit inquiry, I wanted to walk over and ask her how she was. I wanted her to hug me. I wanted to be her daughter again. I took a step forward. Mom? I said softly. She looked up. Her eyes met mine. For a second, I saw recognition. I saw the mother who had nursed me through chickenpox, the woman who had taught me to bake bread. Then, the shutter came down. Her face went blank. It wasn't anger. Anger would have been a connection. It was erasure. She looked at me like I was a stranger who had accidentally bumped into her cart. She didn't speak. She didn't frown. She simply gripped the handle of her cart, turned it 180 degrees, and walked away. I stood there, holding a bag of apples, frozen. The squeak of her cartwheel as she walked away was the loudest sound in the world. I watched her turn the corner into the bakery aisle. She didn't look back. She didn't hesitate. She just erased me. I left the cart of groceries in the middle of the produce section. I walked out of the store, got into my car, and locked the doors. I sat there for 10 minutes, shaking. That was it. That was the punishment. It wasn't just silence. It was non-existence. If I wasn't useful, I wasn't real. I drove home in a daze. The pain was different now. It had hardened. Before, I had been worried about hurting their feelings. Now, I realized they were willing to amputate me to save their pride. I needed facts. I was drowning in emotions, in guilt and gaslighting, and I needed something solid to hold on to. Monday morning. I took a half day off work. I made an appointment at a local credit union. Not my usual bank, but a place where I didn't know anyone. I sat in the office of a loan officer named Mrs. Higgins. She was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain and a no-nonsense demeanor. "How can I help you today, Ms. Sanders?" she asked. "I am not here for a loan." I said, "I am here for information. I have a family member asking me to co-sign a large vehicle loan, $55,000. Mrs. Higgins took off her glasses. "That is a significant amount, I know." I said, "I have been told by this family member and a dealer that if I co-sign, it will not appear on my credit report and will not affect my ability to get a mortgage. I need you to tell me if that is true." Mrs. Higgins let out a short, dry laugh. "That is absolutely false." She turned her monitor so I could see it. "When you co-sign a loan," she explained, pointing a pen at the screen, "you are not vouching for someone. You are borrowing the money. Legally, the debt is 100% yours. It appears on your credit report as an installment loan. It counts against your debt-to-income ratio just as much as if you drove the truck yourself." "And if they miss a payment?" I asked. "Your score drops immediately," she said. "One 30-day late payment can drop your score by up to 100 points. And if they default, we come after you," she said simply. "We sue you. We garnish your wages. And if the car is repossessed and sold at auction for less than the loan balance, which it almost always is, you are responsible for the difference." She leaned forward. "Ms. Sanders, I have been doing this for 30 years. I see co-signed loans go bad every single week. It ruins relationships. If you want to help your family member, give them cash if you have it. Gift them the money, but never, ever co-sign a loan that you are not willing and able to pay off yourself entirely." She printed out a brochure about co-signing risks and handed it to me. I took the paper. It felt heavy. "Thank you," I said. I didn't take the brochure for revenge. I didn't plan to wave it in Kyle's face. I took it for grounding. I needed to know that I wasn't crazy. I needed to know that the laws of mathematics and finance had not suspended themselves just because my mother was ignoring me. I went home and opened my laptop. I opened the folder I had created. Family Loan Dispute. I created a new document and titled it Timeline. I started typing. I treated it like a work project, like a supply chain audit. October 14th. The request. Refused verbally. October 15th. The inquiry. Soft pull by Apex Regional Lending. Initiated by Kyle. Hotmail address. October 16th. The freeze. Placed freezes on all 3 bureaus. October 18th. The call. Kyle claims loan is invisible. Refuses to confirm in writing. October 20th. The rumor. Becca confirms Kyle is soliciting investors/claiming big contracts. October 22nd. The shun. Encounter with mom at grocery store. Refusal to acknowledge contact. October 24th. The expert. Credit union officer confirms co-signing would jeopardize mortgage. I looked at the list. It was stark. It was ugly. But it was the truth. I sensed, with a deep and terrible clarity, that the story was being rewritten around me. In their version, I was the villain who had crushed a young man's dream out of selfishness. In their version, the loan was a guaranteed success that I was too petty to support. I needed this timeline because a year from now, or 5 years from now, they would try to gaslight me about this. They would say, "We never asked for that much," or "You imagined the identity theft." I saved the document. I backed it up to the cloud. I backed it up to an external hard drive. I was not arguing emotionally anymore. I was done trying to explain my feelings to people who were committed to misunderstanding me. I was moving into a new phase. I was the archivist of my own defense. I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of my apartment. It was a lonely feeling. Realizing that the people who were supposed to be your safety net were actually the people you needed protection from. But as I looked at the little green light on my router, blinking steady and sure, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had the receipts, And if they came for me again, and I knew they would be ready. The silence from my family was a heavy, suffocating blanket, but practicalities did not stop just because feelings were hurt. I had mail at their house, important mail, a replacement debit card for a secondary account, and a tax document I had accidentally sent to my old address on an autofill error. I knew I had to go get it. I timed my visit for a Tuesday morning. I knew my mother played bridge at the community center until noon, and my father usually spent his mornings out on job sites for Sanders Property Services. The small maintenance and landscaping business he had run for 30 years. The house should have been empty. I let myself in with my key. The familiar scent of lemon polish and old paper greeted me, a smell that used to mean safety and now smelled like a trap. I walked to the kitchen counter where the mail pile usually lived. It wasn't there. I frowned. My dad had a habit of taking everything into his office, a converted sunroom off the back of the house where he kept his invoices and ledgers in a chaos only he understood. I walked down the hallway, my boots silent on the runner rug. As I approached the office door, which was cracked open a few inches, I heard a voice. It was my father. He wasn't at a job site. I froze. "No, you do not understand," my father was saying. His voice was tight, pitched higher than his usual grumbling baritone. It was the voice of a man trying to talk his way out of a speeding ticket, but desperate. "We just need another 30 days. We have a contract coming in, a big one." I stood there, paralyzed. I should have announced myself. I should have walked away. But the tone of his voice held me there. "I know the notice says final," he said. "I am looking at it, but if you put a lien on the business accounts, I cannot buy materials. I cannot work. You are cutting off the hand that is supposed to pay you. Lien, business accounts." My stomach twisted. There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. "Look," my father said, and I heard the creak of his leather chair as he leaned forward. "We are liquidating some assets. I have financing coming through on a new vehicle that is going to let us expand the route. I just need you to hold off on the levy until November 1st. Financing coming through. The $55,000 truck." My hand flew to my mouth. It wasn't for Kyle. Or rather, it wasn't just for Kyle. I pushed the door open. "Dad?" I said. My father spun around in his chair. He dropped the phone onto the receiver as if it were burning hot. His face was gray, the lines around his mouth deep and etched with a fear I had never seen there before. "Madeline," he stammered. I thought you were at work." "Who was that?" I asked. "No one," he said, shuffling papers on his desk, trying to cover a stack of envelopes with red lettering. "Just a vendor. A supply dispute. You know how it is." I stepped into the room. The air smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. "I heard you say levy. Dad, I heard you say lien. Are you in trouble with the IRS?" "Do not be ridiculous," he snapped, his embarrassment instantly converting into anger. "It is a misunderstanding about payroll taxes from 2 years ago. Our accountant made a mess of things. I am handling it." "You said you were liquidating assets." I said. "You said you had financing coming through on a vehicle." He looked away, staring at the bookshelf filled with old manuals. "Is that what Kyle's truck is?" I asked, the realization slotting into place like a heavy stone. "Is he buying the truck so he can work for you? To generate cash to pay off a tax debt?" My father stood up. He looked small. He had always been a giant to me, a man who could fix anything, lift anything. Now he looked like a man holding up a collapsing ceiling with his bare hands. "We are a family. Madeline," he said. "We help each other. Kyle is stepping up. He is going to take on the heavy hauling routes so we can clear this up. He is doing what a son should do." "By taking on a $55,000 debt he cannot afford?" I asked. "And you wanted me to co-sign it because you knew you couldn't?" He slammed his hand on the desk. "It is a business strategy," he shouted. "It is bridge capital. If you had just signed the paper, we would be operating by now. We would be fixing this. But instead, you have to play the actuary. You have to judge. I am not judging." "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "I am terrified. If that loan defaults, and it would, because Kyle does not make enough to service it. It wouldn't just be my credit that got ruined. It would be my life. You were trying to use my financial stability to plug a hole in your sinking ship. You are part of this ship, he yelled. Everything you have is because of this family. You think you got where you are by yourself? I stared at him. The accusation hung in the air. Gross and unfair. I walked out. I didn't get my mail. I just turned around and walked out of the house because if I stayed, I was going to scream. And I knew screaming wouldn't fix the taxman. I drove to a park 3 miles away and sat in my car, watching a woman push a stroller along the path. The picture was resolving, pixel by ugly pixel. The business, Sanders Property Services, had always seemed stable. We weren't rich, but we had food. We had vacations to the lake. I realized now that I had been looking at a facade. The side hustle my parents ran was likely leveraged to the hilt, floating on credit cards and optimism. Kyle's new opportunity wasn't ambition. It was a bailout plan. They were cannibalizing the children to feed the parent company. My phone rang. It was my sister. Jenna. I answered it on the first ring. Hey, I said, tell me you didn't actually say it. Jenna said without preamble. Say what? Mom called me. Jenna said, she is a mess. Maddie, she says you came over there and interrogated Dad and told him he was a failure. She says you threatened to report them to the IRS. I closed my eyes and rested my forehead against the steering wheel. The narrative machine was working faster than I could keep up. I didn't threaten to report them. I said, I overheard Dad on the phone with them. They are in tax trouble. Jen, deep trouble. That is what the truck is for. They need the truck to make money to pay the back taxes. There was a long silence on the line. Oh, God, Jenna whispered. That makes sense. That makes so much sense. Jenna, I said, did they ask you? Ask me what? To co-sign. No, she said. My credit is trash, and they know it. I'm still paying off my student loans and the credit card from the wedding. You are the only one with the golden ticket. I laughed. A harsh, dry sound. The golden ticket. My credit score. Jenna sighed. Look, Maddie, I am not taking their side, but you need to know what they are saying to the extended family. It is not just about the truck anymore. What is it? I asked. They are saying you owe them. Jenna said. They are saying that when you were in college, they pulled money out of the business to pay for your apartment. They are saying they carried you for years while you found yourself, and now that they need a hand, you are acting like a stranger. I sat up straight. What? I said. Jen, I worked 3 jobs in college. I was a resident assistant for 2 years to get free housing. They sent me maybe $50 a month for groceries. I know that, Jenna said. I remember you eating ramen and stealing bagels from the cafeteria, but they have convinced themselves otherwise. They are rewriting history to justify why they feel entitled to your signature. They think they bought shares in you, Maddie, and now they want their dividend. I felt a wave of nausea. It was one thing to be asked for a favor. It was another to be told I was a debtor in a transaction I never agreed to. I hung up with Jenna and drove back to my apartment. I felt like I was moving through water. I needed to know. I needed to see the ledger they were keeping in their heads. I texted my mother. I want to talk. Not about the truck, about the past. She didn't reply for 4 hours. Finally, a single text came through. We will be home after 6. I went back. It was masochistic. Maybe. But I needed to lance the boil. When I walked into the living room, the atmosphere was different. Dad wasn't shouting anymore. He was sitting in his recliner, staring at the TV, which was off. Mom was knitting, the needles clicking together in a furious rhythm. You said I owe you. I said, standing in the center of the room. Jenna told me, you are telling people I owe you for college. Mom didn't look up. We made sacrifices. Madeline, what sacrifices? I asked, keeping my voice level. Be specific. Because I have my bank statements from 2012. I have my W-2s from the bookstore and the coffee shop. I paid my tuition. I paid my rent. It is not just money, Mom snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "It is the support, the emotional labor, the times we let you come home and do laundry, the times we listen to you cry about your breakups. That is parenting," I said. "That is not a loan. You do not get to bill me for raising me. It is transactional with you," Dad muttered from the chair. "Everything is a ledger. You count every penny. You have lost your heart." "I haven't lost my heart," I said. "I am protecting my future. And right now, it feels like you think my future belongs to you. We are in trouble." "Madeline," Mom burst out. She dropped the knitting. "We are drowning. The business, the market changed. Materials went up. We got behind. We just needed a lifeline. We thought, Madeline is successful. Madeline is steady. She will help us." I softened. The admission was there. "Mom," I said gently, "I will help you. I told you. I will help you budget. I will pay for a bankruptcy attorney if that is what you need. I will help you sell the equipment you can't afford. But I cannot co-sign a loan for $55,000. That is not help. That is suicide for me." "Then you are not helping," Dad said. He stood up and walked out of the room. I stood there with my mother. She looked defeated. "I am thirsty," I said, needing a break from the intensity. "Can I get a glass of water?" She nodded. I walked into the kitchen. On the counter, there was a plastic bin of old papers. My mom had been organizing, a nervous habit she developed when things were out of control. It was mostly old recipes, clippings from newspapers, and warranties for appliances long dead. I saw the corner of a manila folder sticking out. It had my name written on it in my mother's handwriting. Madeline. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. I pulled it out. Inside, there were clippings of my achievements, my honor roll certificates, a newspaper clipping from when I won a spelling bee. It was sweet, heartbreakingly sweet. And then, at the back, I found a piece of paper that made my blood run cold. It was a typed document. It looked like it had been written on a typewriter or an old word processor. It was dated 5 years ago. Agreement of support. Madeline Sanders. Acknowledge the financial support provided by my parents, Robert and Linda Sanders. During my education and early career, I agree to repay this support when I am financially able, in the form of assistance with family debts or direct repayment, estimated at a value of $20,000. There was a line for a signature. It was blank. I had never seen this document in my life. I stared at the paper. They had drafted a contract. They had literally typed up a promissory note for their parenting, intending to have me sign it. And then, what? Chickened out? Forgot? Or did they just keep it as a mental talisman, a proof of debt that they believed was real? I didn't steal it. I took a photo of it with my phone. I put the folder back. I walked out of the kitchen, past my mother who was staring at the wall. "I am going." "Mom," I said. She didn't answer. I got into my car and drove away, but I didn't go home. I pulled into a parking lot of a 24-hour diner and just sat there. My psychology was shifting. For days, I had been oscillating between guilt and anger. Now, looking at the photo of that unsigned contract, I felt something else. Grief. They weren't evil villains twirling mustaches. They were terrified. Aging people who had made bad choices and were now looking for a magic eraser. They had constructed a reality where I was their savings account because the alternative, admitting they had failed, was too painful to bear. They didn't hate me. They just needed me to be a resource more than they needed me to be a daughter, and that broke my heart more than any scream could have. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't look at spreadsheets. I couldn't care about logistics. I had an appointment at 10 o'clock with a consumer protection attorney. I had found the firm online, Klein Associates. They specialized in debt defense and family financial disputes. The office was in a glass building downtown. It was sterile, quiet, and smelled of nothing. No lemon polish, no stale coffee, just cold, clean air. I sat across from a woman named Sarah Klein. She was younger than I expected, sharp-eyed, wearing a blazer that looked like it cost more than my first car. I told her everything, the truck, the silent treatment, the credit inquiry, the invisible loan lie, the overheard phone call about the taxes, and finally, I showed her the photo of the draft agreement. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she capped her pen and looked at me. "Madeline," she said. Her voice was professional but kind. "You are describing a textbook escalation of financial enmeshment." "Enmeshment?" I asked. "It is when boundaries between family members are non-existent," she said. "Your parents view your financial health as an extension of their own. They do not see you as a separate entity. They see you as a limb, and when the body is sick, it draws blood from the limb to survive." She tapped the photo on my phone. "This document? It is legally worthless. It is unsigned. It is vague. Consideration for parenting is not a valid contract basis, but it is psychologically significant. It proves premeditation. They have viewed you as a safety net for years. What do I do?" I asked. "I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like I am the bad guy." "You are not the bad guy," she said firmly. "You are the bank, and the bank is closed." She leaned forward. "Here is my advice. First, the credit inquiry. That is the most dangerous part. It shows they are willing to cross legal lines. You have already frozen your credit. That is good. But you need to send a formal notice, not a text, a letter, certified mail." "To my parents?" I asked, horrified. "Yes. It needs to state clearly that no one has authorization to use your identity for credit purposes. If you do not document this objection, and they manage to open something later, it becomes much harder to prove it wasn't authorized. You need a paper trail of no." She slid a piece of paper across the desk. "Second, do not sign anything, not a cosign, not a character reference, not a loan review. Nothing. If they put a piece of paper in front of you, put your hands in your pockets." "And the guilt?" I asked. "How do I handle the guilt?" She smiled. A sad, knowing smile. "That is not a legal question, Madeline. But I will tell you this. You cannot save someone who is drowning by letting them pull you under. If you co-sign that loan, you will not fix their tax problem. You will just have a tax problem and a truck debt. You will all drown together." I left the office 45 minutes later. I paid the consultation fee. It was $300. It was the best money I had ever spent. I felt shaken. Hearing a stranger confirm the toxicity of the situation made it real in a way my own thoughts hadn't. But I also felt steadier. I wasn't fighting a ghost anymore. I was fighting a specific, diagnosable dynamic. I went home and sat at my computer. I opened a blank document. I wasn't going to write the certified letter yet. That felt like a nuclear option I wasn't quite ready to deploy against my own mother. But I was going to write the message that would serve as my final line in the sand. I spent 2 hours drafting it. I deleted the emotional parts. I deleted the I feel statements. I deleted the apologies. I ended up with this: Mom, Dad, Kyle. I am writing this so there is no confusion. I love you, and I want you to be secure, but I will not co-sign a loan for the truck. I will not co-sign any loan for any purpose. I know about the tax situation. I know the business is struggling. I am willing to help you find a bankruptcy attorney or a financial counselor. I am willing to help you look at options to downsize the business. However, I have seen a credit inquiry on my report that I did not authorize. This is illegal. I have frozen my credit files. If any further attempts are made to use my personal information to secure funding, I will be forced to file a formal fraud report with the police to protect myself. I do not want to do that. Please do not make me do that. I am ready to help you solve the problem with the resources I can give, my time and my advice. But my credit is off the table. Please do not ask again. I stared at the screen. It was harsh. It was cold. It was necessary. I didn't send it to the group chat. I sent it as an email to all 3 of them. I wanted a timestamp. I wanted a record. I hit send. Then I closed my laptop and waited. I expected an explosion. I expected Kyle to call me screaming. I expected my dad to drive over and pound on my door, but nothing happened. An hour passed. 2 hours. I checked my email. Delivered. No reply. The silence had returned. But it felt different this time. It wasn't the silence of punishment. It was the silence of people who had been caught. They knew I knew. They knew the opportunity mask had slipped, and the desperate, tax-evading reality underneath had been exposed. I walked into my kitchen and looked at the fridge. There was a photo there of me and Kyle from 5 years ago, standing on a pier, laughing. We looked so happy. We looked like a family. I took the photo down. I didn't throw it away. I just put it in a drawer, face down. I couldn't look at it right now. I couldn't look at the past. I had to keep my eyes on the present, because if I blinked, they would take my future. That night, I slept with my phone on Do Not Disturb. For the first time in a week, I didn't dream about drowning. I dreamed about a house, my house, the one I was going to buy. It was small, and it was empty, but the door had a lock, and I was the only one who had the key. 3 days after I sent the email drawing my line in the sand. The phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen, watching the word Mom flash against the background photo of her holding a hydrangea bush from happier times. My heart did that traitorous little leap it always did, the biological reflex that said, "She is calling. She still loves you." I picked up. "Hello? Maddie," she said. Her voice was breathless, lacking the icy edge it had carried for the last week. "We got your email." I gripped the edge of my desk. "I am serious." "Mom, I meant every word." "I know," she said. "I know, and we are sorry. We pushed too hard. Dad is, well, you know how he gets. He is under so much pressure. But we want to fix this. We miss you." I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. "I miss you too. Come for dinner tonight," she said. "Just dinner. No business talk, no trucks, just family. I am making your favorite lasagna. Please, Maddie, let us hit the reset button." I wanted to believe her. I wanted it so badly that I ignored the little voice in the back of my head. The one that sounded like the consumer protection attorney I had paid $300 to consult. I told myself that they were my parents, not sharks. I told myself that boundaries were supposed to bring people back together, not drive them apart forever. "Okay," I said. "I will be there at 6. I dressed carefully for the dinner, wearing a soft blue sweater that I knew my mother liked. I stopped at a bakery and bought a lemon tart, a peace offering. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked warm. The porch light was on. It felt like a trap, but it also felt like home. I walked inside, and the smell of garlic and roasting tomatoes hit me. It was the scent of 100 Sunday dinners, the scent of safety. Dad was in the living room. He stood up when I entered. He didn't hug me, but he nodded. "Hello?" "Madeline," he said. "Hi, Dad," I said. Kyle was there too, sitting on the sofa. He looked subdued. He gave me a quick, tight wave. "Hey," he said. We sat down to dinner. The conversation was stilted, fragile as spun sugar. We talked about the weather. We talked about the local high school football team. We talked about my aunt's gallbladder surgery. We studiously avoided the $55,000 elephant in the room, but as I ate the lasagna, I noticed a tension in my mother's shoulders. She was eating too fast. My father kept glancing at the clock on the wall. When the plates were cleared, Mom brought out the lemon tart I had bought. She cut 4 slices. Then, she cleared her throat. "Maddie," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We are so glad you are here." I smiled. "Me too." "Mom." She looked at Dad. He reached under his chair. My stomach turned to lead. He pulled out a folder. It wasn't the dealership folder from before. It was a plain manila envelope. "We respected what you said in your email," Dad said, placing the folder on the table next to the lemon tart. "You said you wouldn't co-sign the dealership loan because of the terms, and we get that. The interest rate was high. It was bad business." I put my fork down. The tart turned to ash in my mouth. So Kyle went out and found a better option. Dad continued. He found a private lender. A peer-to-peer lending group. The rate is much lower, and the best part is, they structure it as a personal loan, not an auto loan. He opened the folder. There was a document on top. Promissory note. Next to the document, he placed a pen, a heavy, expensive ballpoint pen that he usually kept in his desk. He uncapped it. "It is ready to go," Kyle said, leaning forward, his eyes bright with a desperate intensity. "We just need a guarantor. Since it is a personal loan, it is more flexible. If you sign this, the money hits my account tomorrow. We can buy the truck cash. No dealer markup." I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper. I felt a coldness spread through my limbs, starting at my fingertips. This wasn't a peace dinner. It was an ambush. They had lured me here with lasagna and promises of a reset just to get me in the room, thinking my physical presence would make it harder for me to say no. I thought we agreed no business talk. I said quietly, "This isn't business." Mom said, her voice rising, "This is family survival." "Madeline." I pushed my chair back. "No," I said. Dad's face darkened. "Just look at the rates. I do not care about the rates," I said, my voice steady despite the shaking of my hands. "I told you, I will not co-sign. I will not be a guarantor. I will not put my name on any debt that is not mine." Kyle slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. "You are so selfish," he shouted. "You sit there with your perfect credit and your retirement account and you watch us drown. Do you have any idea what we are up against?" "I know about the taxes." "Kyle," I said, "I know about the lien." "So you know we are desperate," he yelled. "And you still say no?" "Yes," I said, "because this doesn't fix it. It just drags me into the hole with you." Kyle stood up. His face was red, twisted with a rage I had never seen directed at me. "You owe us this," he screamed. "You think you are so independent? Who do you think paid for your life?" "I paid for my life," I said, standing up to meet him. "Bull," he spat. "What about when you were 19? What about when Mom and Dad took out that second mortgage?" I froze. "What second mortgage?" "The one they took to keep the lights on while you were in that fancy private college?" Kyle said. "They nearly lost the business back then because they were funneling cash to you. They took on debt so you could study your books and pretend to be better than us. And now that they need help, you act like you don't know them?" I looked at my parents. "Mom," I said, "I went to a state school. I had a scholarship. I worked 3 jobs. What is he talking about?" Mom looked down at the tablecloth. She was weeping now, silent, shaking sobs. "Tell her," Kyle demanded. "Tell her what you sacrificed." Dad looked at me. His eyes were hard, but there was shame behind the anger. "We had a slow year," Dad said, his voice gruff. "The year you started school, we didn't want you to worry. We didn't want you to drop out, so we borrowed against the shop. We fell behind. We have been rolling that debt over for 12 years. Madeline," I felt the room spin. "You borrowed money for the business." I clarified. "Not for me. You borrowed money to keep the business running because it wasn't making a profit." "It was all the same pot," Dad shouted. "If we hadn't been sending you grocery money, maybe we could have paid it. You sent me $50 a month," I screamed back, losing my composure for the first time. $50. You think a $50 check caused a 12-year debt spiral? Dad, that is a lie you tell yourself to feel better about bad management. "That is enough," Dad roared. He pointed a finger at me. "You are ungrateful. You are cold. Get out of my house." I grabbed my purse. "I am going." I said, "But before I go, answer one question. If I sign this loan, and Kyle defaults, which he will, how does that help you? How does ruining me save you? Because family helps family," Mom wailed. She looked up, her face ravaged by tears. It wasn't theatrical. It was the raw, exhausted terror of a woman who had been robbing Peter to pay Paul for a decade and had finally run out of Peters. "Madeline, please," she begged. "We are going to lose the house. Not just the shop. The house. They are threatening to seize the house." I stopped at the door. The house. My childhood home. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I looked at the pen still sitting on the table. Uncapped. Waiting. It would be so easy. Just one signature. I could stop the crying. I could make my mother smile. I could be the hero. But then I remembered the lawyer's words. You cannot save someone who is drowning by letting them pull you under. I walked back to the table. I didn't pick up the pen. I will not sign. I said, but I will do this. I will pay for a session with a forensic accountant and a nonprofit credit counselor. I will pay for the bankruptcy filing if that is what is needed. I will sit with you, look at every single debt, and help you build a plan to save the house. But it has to be the truth. No more hidden loans. No more lies. Dad stared at me. His jaw worked. I am not sitting in front of some stranger and telling them I failed, he hissed. I am not declaring bankruptcy. I have a reputation in this town. That is humiliating. Is it more humiliating than losing your home? I asked. Get out, he said. I looked at Mom. She didn't look up. She was just staring at the promissory note, as if it were a religious icon that had failed to perform a miracle. I walked out. The drive home was a blur. I didn't cry. I felt hollowed out, as if they had scooped out my insides and left only the hard, structural ribs. They didn't want my help. They wanted my credit score. They were willing to burn my future to keep their pride warm for another 6 months. 2 days later, the twist arrived. I came home from work to find a small stack of mail in my apartment mailbox. Usually, it was just junk mail and bills. But one envelope caught my eye. It was a window envelope, the kind used for official business. The return address was North State Collections Agency. It was addressed to Ms. Madeline Sanders. My heart stopped. I walked up the stairs to my apartment, my legs feeling heavy. I sat at my kitchen table and used a knife to slit the envelope open. I pulled out the letter. Notice of delinquency. Dear customer, this is an attempt to collect a debt. Our records indicate that your account ending in 4492 is past due in the amount of $1,200. I looked at the account name listed below. Account holder, Kyle Sanders, service address, my apartment address. I stared at the paper until the letters swam. It wasn't my debt. It was Kyle's. But the address. He had used my apartment address. Why? I looked at the date of the service. It was for a cell phone plan opened 6 months ago. He had opened a new line, and because his credit was shot and his address was flagged, he had used my address. He had used my stable, clean address to trick the system into thinking he was a low-risk borrower. He hadn't just asked for the truck loan last week. He had been using my stability as a mask for months. I didn't call my parents. I called Kyle. He answered on the second ring. Yeah? Kyle, I said, my voice dead calm. I am holding a collections letter from North State. It is for you. But it was sent to my apartment. There was a pause, a long, guilty silence. Oh, he said, yeah. I meant to tell you to look out for that. Why is your bill coming to my house? I asked. I needed a stable address to qualify for the plan. He said. He sounded casual, bored even. You know I move around a lot, and Mom and Dad's address is blacklisted with that carrier because of the old bill. So I put yours down. It's no big deal. I just missed a couple of payments. I'll catch it up. No big deal? I repeated. Kyle, you falsified a billing address. You linked your bad debt to my home. Do you realize that if collections come looking for you, they come here? To my door? You are being dramatic. He sighed. It is just mail. Maddie. It doesn't hurt you. God. You act like I murdered someone. I just borrowed your mailbox. He didn't get it. He truly, fundamentally did not understand that my identity was not a communal resource. To him, my address, my credit score, my name, it was all just family stuff that he was entitled to use because we shared DNA. I am not being dramatic. I said, I am being done. I hung up. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went into survival mode. I sat down at my computer and did what I should have done weeks ago. I went beyond the basic credit freeze. I pulled up the website for check systems, the reporting agency banks use for checking accounts. I placed a security freeze. I went to the National Consumer Telecom Utilities Exchange. I froze my data there too. I went to the opt-out services for pre-screened credit card offers and removed my name from every list. I set up Google Alerts for my name. I changed the locks on my apartment door. It cost me $200, but as I turned the new deadbolt, hearing the heavy thunk of the steel sliding into place, I felt a wave of relief that bordered on nausea. I felt ashamed, not because I was doing it, but because I hadn't done it sooner. I had walked through the world thinking that family meant safe zone. I had assumed that while the world might try to rob me, my brother would only ever try to annoy me. I was wrong. The call was coming from inside the house. Once the physical and digital locks were turned, I wrote the final letter. This one I didn't email. I typed it out, printed it, and signed it with a blue ink pen, my own pen, not one handed to me at a trap dinner, to Robert, Linda, and Kyle Sanders. Effective immediately. I am ceasing all verbal communication regarding finances. I will not discuss loans, debts, or business strategies with you over the phone or in person. If you wish to communicate about these matters, you must do so in writing via email. Furthermore, I have received collection notices for Kyle at my home address. This is a fraudulent use of my residence. I have returned the mail to the sender with a notice that the debtor does not live here. If my name, address, or social security number is used on any application, contract, or billing statement again, I will file a police report for identity theft without a warning. This is not a threat. It is a promise. I am willing to support you as a daughter and a sister. I can help you find job resources. I can help you find a bankruptcy attorney. I can bring food, but I will not be your bank, and I will not be your cosigner. Do not test this boundary. Madeline. I drove to the post office. I paid $6.80 to send it, certified mail with return receipt requested. The clerk handed me the green receipt. Keep this in a safe place. She said, I put it in my wallet, behind my driver's license. The reaction was swift, but it wasn't direct. They didn't call. They didn't email. They knew I had paper trailed them, and they were smart enough not to create more evidence. Instead, they went public. 2 days later, it was my father's 60th birthday. It was a milestone. We had been talking about it for a year. I had planned to buy him a new grill. I wasn't invited. I found out the party was happening when I opened Facebook and saw the photos. They had gone to the Italian restaurant where we used to celebrate my birthdays. There was a long table. My aunts and uncles were there. My cousins were there. There was a big cake with Happy 61st Rob written in gold icing. And there, in the caption posted by my mother, were the words that twisted the knife. So blessed to celebrate my husband's 60th with the people who truly love and support him. Family is about showing up when things get tough. Thank you to everyone who stands by us. Missing some, but we focus on those who care. Missing some. I sat in my dark apartment, lit only by the glow of the laptop screen. I zoomed in on the photo. Kyle was sitting next to Dad, his arm around his shoulders, grinning. He looked like the golden son. He looked like the hero who was trying to help, while I was the cold, selfish daughter who was hoarding her wealth. The comments were worse. Beautiful family. So glad you have such supportive kids. Family is everything. Ignore the negativity. They were talking about me. I was the negativity. I was the shadow in the corner of the frame. The loneliness hit me then. Vast and cold as an ocean. I wasn't just uninvited from a dinner. I was exiled. They had looked at the choice between my financial compliance and my presence in their lives, and they had chosen the money. Or rather, they had chosen the fantasy of the money. They would rather have a comfortable lie with Kyle than a difficult truth with me. I closed the laptop. I walked into my kitchen and made myself a sandwich. I stood over the sink and ate it, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. It hurt. God, it hurt. It felt like an amputation without anesthesia. But as I swallowed the last bite, I realized something else. I was safe. My credit was frozen. My door was locked. My savings were intact. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't wondering what they would ask for next, because they had already asked for everything. And I had said no. Their love was conditional. It was a transaction. Sign here, and we will love you. Pay this, and you are a good daughter. I had refused the transaction, and now I was free. I washed my plate, I dried it, I put it away. Then I went to my calendar and marked the date. Not as the day I lost my family, but as the day I finally stopped paying the price of admission. But I knew, with the instinct of a survivor, that the silence wouldn't last. The taxman doesn't care about Facebook posts. The collection agencies don't care about family loyalty. The house of cards was falling, and even though I had stepped out of the blast zone, I was about to watch it collapse. The silence following my father's 60th birthday party was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. I had been exiled, removed from the family narrative like a character written out of a show, but I knew the story wasn't over. Debts do not disappear just because you stop talking to the person who refuses to pay them. I spent 3 days in a state of suspended animation, going to work, coming home, and checking my credit report with the frequency of a nervous tick. On Thursday evening, my phone rang. I expected it to be my mother, perhaps calling to guilt-trip me about missing the party I hadn't been invited to. But the name on the screen was Uncle Jerry. My father's younger brother was a quiet man. He ran a hardware store in the next county over and usually communicated in grunts and head nods. We hadn't spoken on the phone in years. I answered, feeling a spike of adrenaline. "Hello?" "Maddie," Jerry said. His voice sounded like gravel rolling in a mixer. "You got a minute?" "Of course. Uncle Jerry, is everything okay?" "No," he said bluntly. "It isn't. Look, I am not calling to lecture you. I saw the Facebook post. I saw the comments. It turned my stomach. I let out a breath. Thank you. It has been hard." "I bet," he said. "Listen, I am going to tell you something, and if you tell your father I told you, I will deny it. But you need to know what you are standing in front of." I sat down at my kitchen table. "What is it?" "Your dad came to me 6 months ago," Jerry said. "He asked for $20,000. I closed my eyes. "Did you give it to him?" "I couldn't." Jerry said, "Business has been slow for me too." But I asked him why he needed it so bad. He wouldn't give me a straight answer, so I asked around. "I have a buddy who supplies lumber for Sanders Property Services." He paused, and I could hear him taking a drag of a cigarette on the other end. "Your dad got caught up in one of those merchant cash advance loans." Jerry said, "You know what those are?" I felt a chill. I did know. In my line of work, we saw trucking companies get destroyed by them all the time. They weren't technically loans. They were purchases of future receivables. They gave you quick cash up front, say $50,000, and then they took a percentage of your daily sales directly out of your bank account every single day until you paid back $80,000 or $90,000. The effective interest rates could be over 100%. They were the payday loans of the business world, unregulated and ruthless. "Oh, God," I whispered. "He took a big advance about 2 years ago," Jerry explained, "to buy that new excavator. He thought he could pay it off in 6 months, but then winter hit, and the jobs dried up, and the daily withdrawals didn't stop. He had to take another advance to pay the first one, then another. He is stacking them. Maddie, he is paying one shark with money from another shark. That explains the panic," I said. "The puzzle pieces slamming together. That explains why he needs cash flow immediately." "Exactly," Jerry said. "The truck. Kyle's truck. It isn't about Kyle." "What do you mean?" "If Kyle gets that truck," Jerry said, "he is going to contract for your dad. But on paper, he will be an independent operator. The plan is for Kyle to bill the company for hauling services at an inflated rate. It pulls cash out of the business account before the lenders can garnish it. And it puts it into Kyle's pocket, which then goes right back to your parents to pay the mortgage and the daily fees." I felt sick. It was money laundering. Clumsy, desperate, family-style money laundering. "And if I co-signed?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Jerry sighed. "If you co-sign, you are the backstop. When the business finally collapses, and it will, Maddie, you can't outrun those rates. The truck gets repossessed, but since the loan would be in your name, or guaranteed by you, the bank comes for you for the $55,000. Meanwhile, your parents declare bankruptcy and walk away. You would be the only one left standing with a wallet. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. They were going to feed me to the wolves. They weren't asking for a favor. They were asking for a human shield. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because you are a good kid," Jerry said, "and because your dad is my brother. But he has lost his mind with fear. He isn't thinking straight. He is drowning, and he is grabbing onto anyone near him. Don't let him pull you down. Maddie." He hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment, feeling the truth settle over me like a layer of ash. It wasn't about a truck. It wasn't about Kyle's independence. It was a $55,000 life raft made of lies. I needed to clear my head. I walked over to my desk to pay my own bills, a ritual that usually calmed me. I liked the order of it. Money in, money out, zero balance. I opened my bank statement online. I started going through the line items, checking them off against my budget: rent, electric, groceries, gas. Then my eye caught a charge I had seen 100 times but never really looked at. Safekeep storage, $45. I frowned. I had a storage unit? I clicked on the transaction history. The charge had been hitting my account on the 15th of every month for 4 years. I racked my brain. 4 years ago. That was when I moved into this apartment. I had downsized. I vaguely remembered my mother suggesting we get a unit for some of my winter clothes and old family things that didn't fit in my new place. She had set it up. I had given her my debit card number to pay the deposit. I had never canceled it. I had just absorbed it. $45 was small enough to ignore. A piece of financial background noise. I called the storage facility. "Hi, this is Madeline Sanders." I said, "I am calling about a unit under my name." One moment. The clerk said, "Yes, Unit B14. You are paid up through the end of the month." "Can you tell me who accessed the unit last?" I asked. "Let me check the gate logs," he said. "Looks like a Kyle Sanders keyed in about 3 weeks ago, and a Linda Sanders 2 days before that. It wasn't my unit. It was their attic. I felt a fresh wave of fury. It wasn't the amount. $45 a month for 4 years was over $2,000. It was the principal. They had set up a bill in my name, on my auto pay, to store their junk, and they had let me pay it for 48 months without ever offering to reimburse me. I am the bank. I thought, I am just a resource to them. A checking account with legs. I would like to cancel the unit. I told the clerk, "You still have items inside," he warned. "I don't," I said. "My family does. Please send a notice to the emergency contact on file." That should be my mother. "That they have 30 days to vacate before the lock is changed and the contents are auctioned. But just do it," I said, "and remove my card from the file immediately." I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer, violent intensity of my anger. But beneath the anger, there was clarity. I couldn't just stay silent anymore. Silence was passive. I needed to confront the reality, not the story they were telling. I got in my car. I didn't call first. I knew they would be home. They couldn't afford to go anywhere. When I walked into my parents' house, the television was blaring. It was a game show. Bright lights and cheering crowds. A stark contrast to the gloom that seemed to hang in the corners of the living room. My mom looked up from the sofa. She looked older than she had a week ago. Her face was gray, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Maddie," she said, sounding hopeful and terrified all at once. "Turn off the TV." "Mom," I said gently. She muted it. "Where is Dad?" "He is in the garage," she said, "working on the mower." I sat down on the coffee table, directly in front of her. I didn't want to loom over her. I wanted to look her in the eye. "Mom," I said, "I know about the merchant cash advance." Her face crumbled. It wasn't a slow dissolve. It was an instant collapse. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She put her hand to her throat as if she couldn't breathe. "I know you are paying daily rates," I continued. keeping my voice low and compassionate. I know you are stacking loans. I know the truck was a way to funnel money back into the business to keep the lenders away. She started to cry. Not the manipulative tears from the dinner, but real, ugly, heaving sobs. She curled in on herself, pulling her knees up. We are going to lose it. She gasped. We are going to lose everything. Is the house collateral? I asked. She nodded. We signed. We didn't read the fine print. We just needed the cash for payroll. And now they say they can place a lien on the house if we miss 3 days of payments. We missed 2 last week. I reached out and took her hand. It was cold. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Why did you try to trick me into a $55,000 debt instead of just telling me you were in trouble? Because you are the success story, she wailed. You are the one who made it. We couldn't let you know we failed. Dad is so proud. He couldn't bear for you to look at him with pity. So you decided to drag me down with you? I asked. You decided it was better to ruin my credit than to damage your pride? We thought we could fix it, she insisted. We just needed one big job. Kyle said if he had the truck, he could bill $10,000 a month. We could have paid you back. We never wanted to hurt you. The front door opened. Kyle walked in. He was wearing his work boots and a clean t-shirt. He stopped when he saw me holding Mom's hand. He saw her tears. What did you do to her? He snapped, dropping his keys on the table. I didn't do anything. I said, not letting go of her hand. We are talking about the merchant cash advance. Kyle, I know the plan. Kyle's face flushed a deep, angry red. He didn't look ashamed. He looked caught, and like a cornered animal. He attacked. So you know, he sneered. So what? You going to write us a check? Or are you just here to gloat? I am not here to gloat, I said. I am here to understand why you felt entitled to use my identity to cover up a disaster. Entitled? Kyle laughed. A harsh, barking sound. You think you are so special. Madeline, you think you built that life of yours all by yourself? I did. I said, no, you didn't, he shouted, stepping closer. You got out because we stayed. I stayed here. I helped Dad with the business while you went off to college. I mowed the lawns. I fixed the trucks. I stayed in this town and took care of them so you could go play business executive in the city. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You owe us, he screamed. You owe this family. Your job. Your nice apartment. Your perfect credit score. It is all built on the fact that I stayed behind to carry the load. And now, when the load is too heavy, you refuse to lift a finger? You are a parasite. Madeline, you took the best parts of this family and left us with the scrap. I stared at him. I saw it then. The narrative he had constructed to survive his own mediocrity. He wasn't a failure in his own eyes. He was a martyr. He believed that my success was stolen from him. That there was a finite amount of luck in the universe, and I had taken his share. It wasn't about the money. It was about status. He wanted to destroy my stability because seeing it made him feel small. Kyle, I said softly, I didn't leave you. You chose to stay. And you are not asking for help. You are demanding a tribute. I stood up. I am not signing the loan. I said to both of them, and I canceled the storage unit today. You have 30 days to get your things out. Mom looked up, shocked. The storage unit? I have been paying for it for 4 years. Mom, I said, that is over $2,000. I never used it. That stops today. You are petty, Kyle spat. You are unbelievably petty. No, I said, I am awake. I walked out. I didn't see my father. I didn't want to. I knew if I saw him, the anger would burn the compassion right out of me, and I needed to save my energy for what came next. The next morning, I took a half-day off work and went to an office building on the east side of the city. I had an appointment with Consumer Credit Pathways, a nonprofit credit counseling agency. I met with a counselor named Mr. Henderson. He was a bald man with kind eyes and a desk cluttered with stress balls. I didn't bring my parents. I went alone. I laid it all out for him. The MCA loans, the daily draws, the threat to the house, the $55,000 truck scheme. Mr. Henderson listened, taking notes on a yellow pad. When I finished, he sat back and clasped his hands. "Madeline," he said, "you are right to be terrified. Merchant cash advances are the stage 4 cancer of small business finance. Is there a way out?" I asked. "Without the truck?" "There is," he said, "but it is painful. It involves a strategic default on the advances, likely followed by a Chapter 13 bankruptcy to save the house. It requires freezing accounts, changing merchant processors, and enduring a storm of harassment from the lenders. And money?" I asked. "Do they need money?" He looked at me over his glasses. "Money is not the problem. The problem is the hole in the bucket. If you give them $50,000 today, the lenders will take it tomorrow. And next week, they will be broke again. You cannot finance a secret. You cannot pay your way out of a structural deficit with high-interest debt." He drew a circle on his notepad. "They need structure," he said. "They need a forensic accounting of their cash flow. They need to stop the bleeding. If you want to help, offer them structure. Do not offer them sacrifice. If you co-sign that loan, you are just throwing yourself into the hole with them." I left his office with a plan. It wasn't the plan they wanted, but it was the only one that would actually work. I went home and drafted a document. It wasn't a legal contract, but it looked like one. I used the skills I had learned in logistics: clear terms, clear deliverables. Proposal for family financial assistance offer. 1. I will pay for a bankruptcy attorney retainer, up to $3,000. 2. I will contribute $500 per month directly to the grocery and utility providers for a period of 6 months. 3. I will pay for 6 sessions with Mr. Henderson at Consumer Credit Pathways. Conditions: 1. No co-signing of any loans. 2. Full disclosure of all business and personal debts, including the merchant cash advances. 3. Immediate cessation of all new credit applications. 4. Attendance at monthly counseling sessions. 5. If any further identity theft occurs, this agreement is void and legal action will be taken. I printed 2 copies. I drove back to my parents' house that evening. I felt like a diplomat entering a war zone. They were all there: Mom, Dad, Kyle. They were eating dinner, pizza from a box. The atmosphere was sullen. I put the papers on the table. "I have a proposal." I said. Dad looked at the paper. He picked it up. He put on his reading glasses. I watched his eyes scan the lines. I saw his jaw tighten. I saw the vein in his temple pulse. He didn't look at the offer of money. He looked at the conditions: full disclosure, counseling. He threw the paper back onto the table. It slid across the surface and fell to the floor. "No," he said. "Dad, look at the numbers." I said, "I am offering to pay for the lawyer. I am offering to buy your groceries for 6 months. I do not need you to buy my groceries," he roared, standing up. "I do not need my daughter to audit my books. Who do you think you are? You come in here with your demands, treating me like I am your employee? I am treating you like someone who is in trouble." I said, "I am the father." He shouted, thumping his chest. "I am the head of this house. I do not submit to you. I do not answer to you. You want to help? You sign the loan. You trust me. You do what you are told." He was shaking. It wasn't just anger. It was a desperate, flailing defense of his own ego. He would rather lose the house than lose his authority. He would rather go bankrupt than admit to his daughter that he couldn't do math. I looked at Mom. She was looking at the pizza box, tears sliding down her nose. She wouldn't look at me. She was voting with her silence. She was choosing his pride over my help. I looked at Kyle. He was smirking. He liked this. He liked seeing me rejected. It validated his theory that I was the outsider. "Okay," I said. I picked up the other copy of the proposal. I walked to the door. "The offer stands," I said, not turning back. "If you change your minds, you know where to find me. But the bank is closed. Dad, the signature is never happening." I left the house. I didn't go home and cry. I went home and went to work. I sensed that the blow-up was coming. The rejection of the proposal was the final straw. They were backed into a corner, and they had no weapons left except to attack me. They would twist the story. They would tell the extended family I had tried to blackmail them. They would say I had demanded control of the business. I needed to be bulletproof. I opened my family loan dispute folder. I printed everything. I printed the timeline. I printed the screenshots of the text messages where Kyle admitted to the invisible loan lie. I printed the credit report showing the unauthorized inquiry from Apex Lending. I printed the collections letter for Kyle's phone bill that had come to my address. I printed the email where I had set the boundary. I printed the proposal I had just offered. I bought a 3-ring binder. I punched holes in the pages. I organized them chronologically. Exhibit A, the ask. Exhibit B, the fraud. Exhibit C, the harassment. Exhibit D, the truth. I wasn't planning to publish it. I wasn't going to post it on Facebook. I wasn't that cruel. But I knew there was a family reunion coming up in November. It was the big one. Thanksgiving at Aunt Linda's house. Everyone would be there, and I knew, with a sick certainty, that my brother was going to make a scene. He was going to use the audience to shame me into submission, or simply to destroy my reputation so that my rejection of them wouldn't sting so much. I slid the binder into my bookshelf, right next to my college yearbooks. I didn't want to use it. I prayed I wouldn't have to use it. But as I looked at the spine of the binder, I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't a helpless little girl anymore. I wasn't the responsible one, whose duty was to suffer in silence. I was the one with the receipts. And if they wanted to tell a story, I was going to make sure it was a nonfiction. Thanksgiving at Aunt Linda's house had always been the centerpiece of the Sanders family calendar. It was a production of military precision involving 3 turkeys, a folding table that stretched into the living room, and an unspoken truce that usually kept political arguments to a minimum until after the pumpkin pie. This year, however, the air in the house was thick enough to choke on. I arrived 20 minutes late. It was a strategic choice. I wanted to minimize the time spent standing around holding a glass of wine and making small talk with cousins who had clearly read my mother's Facebook posts. I wore a dark green dress, armor-like in its simplicity, and on my shoulder, I carried a structured leather tote bag. Inside that bag, nestled between my wallet and my keys, was the white 3-ring binder. I parked my car at the end of the long driveway, behind a line of SUVs and trucks. I took a deep breath, watching my breath plume in the cold November air. "You can do this," I whispered to myself. "You are safe. You are the bank, and the bank is closed." When I walked through the front door, the noise of the party dipped. It wasn't a complete silence. The football game was still blaring from the den, and babies were still crying. But the conversation in the entryway stopped. My mother was standing by the coat rack, taking Aunt Linda's coat. She froze when she saw me. She looked fragile. Her eyes were darting around the room as if checking for exits. "Hello? Mom?" I said. "Hello? Madeline," she said. Her voice was thin. "I didn't think you were coming. I wouldn't miss it," I said. I walked past her into the main room. My father was holding court near the fireplace, a drink in his hand. When he saw me, his jaw set in a hard line. But he didn't make a scene. He simply turned his back, a deliberate, theatrical gesture of shunning that rippled through the room. I felt the eyes on me. My cousin Sarah gave me a sympathetic wince from the corner. My brother, Kyle, was standing near the kitchen island, laughing loudly at a joke I hadn't heard. He looked triumphant, in his mind. My presence here was a capitulation. He probably thought I had come to apologize, to kiss the ring and sign the papers. I found a spot near the window and waited. Dinner was announced at 4 o'clock. We shuffled into the dining room, a herd of 30 people squeezing into assigned seats. I found my name card. It was at the far end of the kids' table. Even though I was 32 years old, it was a petty placement, a final reminder of my demoted status. I sat down. I unfolded my napkin. I watched the turkey being carved. The meal proceeded with an agonizing slowness. I ate my stuffing. I drank my water. I ignored the whispers that floated down the table, heard she tried to get him arrested. Thinks she is too good for us. Poor Rob. He looks so stressed. I let them whisper. I knew the script they had been given. When the plates were cleared and coffee was being poured, the tapping of a spoon against a glass cut through the chatter. It was Kyle. He stood up at the head of the main table, standing next to Dad. He looked flushed, his tie loosened. He held up a glass of cheap champagne. "I would like to propose a toast," Kyle announced. The room quieted. Aunt Linda smiled encouragingly. "To family," Kyle said, raising his glass higher. "To the people who stick by you when the chips are down. You know, this year has been tough for the Sanders clan. We have had some struggles, but it has taught us who really matters." He paused, letting his gaze drift down the length of the table until it landed, heavy and malicious, on me. "It is easy to be family when things are good," Kyle continued, his voice taking on a preaching cadence. "It is easy to come to dinner and eat the food. But real family steps up. Real family doesn't hoard their blessings while their own flesh and blood suffers. Real family doesn't forget where they came from just because they got a fancy degree in a city apartment." The room went dead silent. This wasn't a toast. It was a public execution. My father nodded solemnly, staring into his drink. My mother looked down at her lap, twisting her napkin. "Some people," Kyle said, smiling a cold, tight smile, "think success is about a credit score. But we know the truth. Success is about loyalty. So here is to the ones who stayed, to the ones who help, and to the ones who know that money is nothing if you lose your soul." He tipped his glass toward me. "Cheers." A few people murmured, "Cheers," their voices uncertain. Most people just looked at their plates, embarrassed by the naked aggression of the attack. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My hands were shaking in my lap. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, to grab my bag and flee to the car and never look back. But I didn't run. I stood up. The movement was sudden enough that Aunt Linda jumped. Kyle looked at me, his eyebrows raised in mock surprise. "You have something to say, Maddie? Or are you just leaving?" I picked up my tote bag from the floor. I reached inside. I pulled out the white binder. I placed it on the table. The sound of the plastic hitting the wood echoed in the quiet room. "I am not leaving, Kyle," I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. "And I am not drinking to that toast. Madeline, sit down." My father growled from his seat. "Do not make a scene. You made the scene." "Dad," I said, turning to look at him, "you and Kyle just used a family Thanksgiving to question my character in front of 30 people. You accused me of losing my soul because I won't give you money. If you are going to put me on trial in public, I am going to present my defense in public." I opened the binder. "I am not discussing private finances," I said, addressing the room. "I am not going to tell you how much money anyone makes or owes. That is not your business. But I am going to correct the narrative that I am a selfish daughter who refused to help her brother buy a work truck." I held up the first page. It was the printout of the credit inquiry. "I refused to co-sign the loan," I said clearly, "because on October 15th, a credit application was run in my name without my permission. My Social Security number was used to attempt to secure $55,000 of debt. That is not asking for help. That is identity theft." Gasps rippled through the room. Aunt Linda's hand flew to her mouth. "That is a lie," Kyle shouted, his face turning purple. "We were just checking rates. You are twisting everything." I turned the page. I held up the screenshot of the text messages where Kyle admitted the loan would be invisible. I turned the page again. I held up the collection letter from North State Collections. "And this," I said, holding the paper high so everyone could see the red past due stamp, "this is a collections notice for Kyle's cell phone bill. It was sent to my apartment last week. Why? Because Kyle used my address to open the account after his own credit failed. He linked his bad debt to my home without asking me." I looked directly at my brother. "You didn't ask me for help. Kyle, you stole my identity. You tried to use my credit history as a mask for your own financial decisions, and when I caught you, instead of apologizing, you decided to shun me and tell everyone I was the villain." Kyle looked around the room, panic flaring in his eyes. He saw the shift. He saw Uncle Jerry frowning. He saw the cousins whispering. "She is crazy," Kyle yelled, pointing at me. "She forged those. She is trying to ruin me because she is jealous." "Madeline, stop this," Mom cried out. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "Please, this is family business." It became family business when you posted about it on Facebook. "Mom," I said, my voice dropping to a lower, sadder register. "It became family business when you let Kyle give a speech about my lack of loyalty while you knew that he had tried to defraud me." I closed the binder. I offered to pay for a financial counselor. I said to the room, I offered to pay for a bankruptcy attorney. I offered to buy groceries for 6 months. I put that in writing. I looked at my father. "But you turned it down. Dad, you said it was humiliating. You said you didn't want my charity. You wanted my signature because a signature is invisible, but a bankruptcy is public. You wanted me to risk my future so you could save your pride." "You ungrateful brat," Dad shouted. He slammed his fist on the table. "After everything we gave you, we sacrificed everything for this family. We are drowning." The scream came from my mother. It tore through the room, raw and jagged. Everyone froze. Mom was standing at the head of the table, clutching the tablecloth. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face. "We are drowning," she repeated, her voice breaking into a sob. "The business is gone. Rob, it is gone. We owe $60,000 in cash advances. They call the house 10 times a day. They are going to take the house." "Linda, shut up," Dad hissed, reaching for her arm. "No." She pulled away. "I can't do it anymore. I can't lie anymore." She looked at me, her eyes pleading and terrified. "We didn't want to hurt you. Maddie, we thought if we could just get the truck, if we could just get one big contract, we could catch up. We were just trying to survive. We used the silence. We were mean to you, because we thought if we pushed you hard enough, you would give in. We thought you were the only one who could save us." The room was deadly silent. The truth hung in the air, stripping the paint off the walls. It wasn't a story about a selfish daughter anymore. It was a story about a desperate, sinking ship trying to drag a lifeboat down with it. I felt a surge of pity, hot and overwhelming. I looked at my mother, a woman I loved, a woman who had braided my hair and made my costumes, and I saw how small she had become under the weight of the lies. I walked over to her. I didn't hug her. I maintained the physical distance, but I softened my voice. "Mom," I said, "I love you. I really do. But I'm not your safety net. I cannot be the thing that saves you from math." I looked at my father. He was staring at his plate, his face gray and defeated. "If you want the help I offered, the counselor, the lawyer, the structure, it is still on the table." I said, "But the co-signing is dead. The secrets are dead. You have to face this." My father stood up. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and shame that I knew I would never forget. "You enjoyed this," he spat. "You enjoyed humiliating me." "No, Dad," I said, "I survived it." He stormed out. The back door slammed so hard the window panes rattled. Kyle stood there for a moment, looking at the empty doorway where Dad had vanished, then back at me. His face twisted into a sneer. "You are a traitor," he said. "You are not a Sanders. I am the only one acting like an adult." I said. Kyle made a noise of disgust and followed Dad out the door. I stood there in the dining room, holding my binder. My mother was sobbing into her hands. The rest of the family was frozen, staring at their half-eaten pumpkin pie. I felt a sudden, crushing exhaustion. I turned to leave. Wait. The voice came from the head of the table. It was Aunt Linda, my father's older sister, the matriarch who had hosted this dinner for 30 years. She had always been the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over cracks and ignored the elephants in the room. She stood up. She looked at my mother, then at the empty door, and finally at me. She picked up her wineglass. "She is right," Aunt Linda said. Her voice was clear and sharp. The cousins looked up. "We have all watched this happen," Linda continued, looking around the table. "We all knew Rob was in trouble. Jerry told me. Sarah knew. We all knew. And we let them treat Madeline like a criminal because it was easier than confronting Rob. She looked at me. It is not loyalty to let your family destroy themselves, Aunt Linda said. And it is not help to force someone to sign a loan they do not owe. That is not help. It is coercion. She set her glass down. Madeline, put your binder away. You sit down. You eat some pie. You are not going anywhere. I felt a lump form in my throat, hot and sharp. I had expected to walk out into the cold night alone. I hadn't expected the cavalry. Uncle Jerry nodded from across the table. Good job, kid, he grunted. My mother looked up. She wiped her face with the napkin. She looked at Aunt Linda, then at me. She didn't apologize, not yet, maybe not ever, but the anger was gone. The fever had broken. I sat back down. I didn't eat the pie. My stomach was in knots, but I stayed. I sat there while the family slowly, awkwardly resumed their conversations. The tone had changed. The false cheer was gone, replaced by a subdued, sober reality. Later, as I walked to my car, the night air felt different. It was crisp, clean. I looked back at the house. I knew the road ahead was going to be messy. My parents would likely lose the business. They might lose the house. There would be bankruptcy hearings, legal fights, and months of painful downsizing. Kyle would probably never speak to me again, but as I unlocked my car door and tossed the binder onto the passenger seat, I realized that I had saved the most important thing. I hadn't just saved my credit score, I had saved my reality. I had refused to let them write me into their tragedy as the villain. I started the engine. The heater kicked on, blowing warm air over my cold hands. I drove away from the family gathering, not as an exile, but as a woman who had drawn a line in the earth and stood on the other side of it. I was alone in the car, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. Thank you so much for listening to After I Refused to Co-Sign My Brother's $55,000 Truck Loan. My entire family gave me the silent treatment. This was a heavy story about boundaries, financial abuse, and the difficult choices we sometimes have to make to protect ourselves from the people we love. It's never easy to say no to family, but as Madeline learned, sometimes no is the only honest word left. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to draw a hard financial boundary with a family member? How did you handle the fallout? Please share your thoughts and experiences in English below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more realistic, dramatic tales of justice and family dynamics, please make sure to hit that subscribe button for revenge stories and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, stay safe, protect your peace, and remember, you are not a safety net. Goodbye for now.